Guys, we have got to talk about this Jake Paul situation. I've got a lot to say. It's got me really worked up. So I wake up this morning and I see that Jake Paul has just completely stolen the thunder away from Knockout Chaos tomorrow. He's announced Mike Tyson and himself July 20th at the AT&T Stadium in Dallas, Texas. There is so much I want to say about this because I'm embarrassed, guys. I'm a hardcore boxing fan, and I'm embarrassed by this situation because I know Jake Paul against a nearly 60-year-old Mike Tyson is going to literally blow the doors off Knockout Chaos and quite possibly Tyson Fury against Alexander Usyk and Dmitry Bivol against Artur Beterbiev. I'm completely serious because I'm talking about the amount of interest these shows are going to generate. Forget the fact that we as hardcore boxing fans know which one's the real boxing match. The reality is people need to actually watch these shows for them to matter. And from that point of view, having a big stadium fight in the United States, in one of the biggest cities, on the biggest streaming platform in the world, live, it's going to be an enormous, enormous event. Heck, I'll admit it. I've already put my name on the pre-sale list for tickets for this event. Am I going to Saudi Arabia? No, I'm not. And guys, this is the big problem. Despite the fact that we're repeatedly told by the promoters, by the event organizers, how big of a deal these Saudi shows are, the reality is they're not. They're not to the general public. They're not to the general sports fan. They're not to the casual sports fan. And they're not helping grow the sport of boxing. I'm sorry, but that's the reality of the situation. Because no matter how many times it gets repeated, people are not going to be tuning in to watch this event at 7 o'clock in the morning on the West Coast in the United States, at 10 o'clock in the morning on the East Coast, on a Friday in the middle of a working day. And heck, I don't even know that it's going to do that well in the UK. But the big problem is these shows are being held up as the savior of boxing, and they just aren't. They aren't because the press conferences are boring. They aren't because the main events aren't actually that amazing. I'm sorry. We lucked into the fact that Tyson Fury against Francis Ngannou turned out to be a more exciting event, but that was because Tyson himself didn't prepare. He was overweight. He was out of shape. And Francis is a deadly serious competitor. He probably actually is the baddest man on the planet, regardless of what happens between him and Anthony Joshua. But that basically was an accident. The event organizers staged it as a circus fight. It turned out to be better than expected. And then a few months later, we got Anthony Joshua and Deontay Wilder on the same card, except they didn't fight each other, and we were told, oh, don't worry, by March time, they'll be in the ring. This is just to allow the fight to marinate a little bit more. It's been marinating for 5 freaking years, and guess what? It's never going to happen now in all likelihood because they missed the chance in December. And now, yeah, okay, Francis Ngannou against Anthony Joshua. If Francis knocks AJ out, good for him. I'll be really excited. I'll be really happy. It'll be interesting. Zhang against Parker. It's a good fight. Is it any better than Joe Joyce against Zhang that happened in the UK in September? No. No, it isn't. That was a good fight too, and there's no reason why Parker against Zhang couldn't be happening in the UK either. Couldn't be happening in the United States. Heck, it could even be happening in China, where at least there'll be some fans there supporting Zhilei Zhang, their home guy. But here's the thing. Jake Paul against Mike Tyson, it's going to be broadcast on Netflix. It's going to have a press conference that will have 1 million times more views on TikTok, on Instagram Reels, on YouTube Shorts. All of these metrics, it's gonna blow this stuff away. And it's because these people, even though Mike Tyson is nearly 60 years old, they know how to sell the fights. They know that when these promotional events happen, people want to see viral clips. They want things to talk about. And for everyone saying, well, it doesn't matter because these are casuals. Yes, it does. And here's why it matters. You don't have, quite frankly, enough of an audience of hardcore boxing fans to actually save the sport, quite frankly, from being blown out of the water by the UFC, especially in the United States. You see, the reason this situation has got me so worked up is because I love the sport of boxing. I love the competition of boxing. And unfortunately, right now, it's being ruined by mediocre fights taking place in another part of the world where the promoters don't even need to make an effort to promote the event. They don't need to make any effort at the press conferences and the interviews to do anything of interest because they're getting paid these enormous paydays. You have fighters getting paid $50 million to sit there at the press conference. Heck, it's no wonder they're not making any effort to promote the show. And I guarantee you that's not going to be the case when Jake Paul and Mike Tyson are at the press conference. I guarantee you will be seeing this one more on social media, on YouTube, everywhere than you've seen anything for this show. I guarantee that will happen because they actually want to fill the 80,000 seats in the AT&T Stadium. They actually want it to be a success so that Netflix will bring the show back. And the problem with these cards in Saudi Arabia is nobody's there. There's a dead atmosphere. Nobody is flying from the UK. Nobody is flying from the United States. Nobody is flying from Australia. Nobody's going from Ireland. And it doesn't matter how many people don't watch it on TV, how many people don't go to these shows, because they're getting guaranteed paydays to go over there and essentially act as tourism ambassadors for Saudi Arabia and for Riyadh season. So guys, this is the reality. Jake Paul and Mike Tyson is a fight that is of very little sporting value. It's going to be, and I've been to Jake Paul fights live. They're not good, okay? But the production values are, the interest that it generates is significant. The production values of Jake Paul's shows, they're better than most of the hardcore boxing shows out there, okay? They really are. And boxing needs to actually learn from this, okay? The reality is, if you look at Riyadh season's promotion of the Knockout Chaos card, it's not good. And the viewing figures reflect that. I will genuinely be surprised if this card gets more than 10,000 pay-per-view buys in the United States. It's not going to perform. The biggest boxing shows of this year, it's Jake Paul and Mike Tyson, and it's Devin Haney against Ryan Garcia. And that's another thing, by the way. We're literally hearing more talk this week about Ryan Garcia's mental breakdown than we are about these supposedly mega cards that are happening tomorrow. The interest just isn't there, and it's because the fights are not happening in a place that people want to go to. There's not a crowd there. They're happening on days when people don't want to watch them. They're being broadcast on TV networks that nobody subscribes to. It's a mess. But the problem is, because the promoters and the fighters are being paid these huge guaranteed purses, there's no incentive to actually change anything. And so that's why I'm hoping that Ryan Garcia and Devin Haney and Jake Paul and Mike Tyson will not only succeed, but actually be a wake-up call to boxing fans and boxing promoters that we need these shows to actually happen in the United States, in the UK, in Ireland, in Australia, in front of crowds, in front of a lively atmosphere, in front of real fans, and not as some sort of vanity project in Saudi Arabia or North Korea or Afghanistan or Vladimir Putin's backyard. It doesn't matter how much these people pay for these shows. It's not actually helping the sport. It's helping the promoters. It's helping certain fighters and their pocketbooks. It's not good for boxing fans. It's not good for the future of the sport. And it's going to create an enormous problem when fights like this, Jake Paul and Mike Tyson, are generating enormously more figures than any of these supposedly hardcore boxing events. And do you know why that is? We just had Showtime pull out of boxing, and we're going to see more networks pull out of boxing too. And do you know what they're going to replace it with? They're going to replace it with novelty fights that aren't even competitive but will generate more discussion, like Ryan Garcia and his mental breakdown against Devin Haney, even though we all know who's going to win that fight. And that's what's going to happen if serious boxing doesn't get its act together and start putting on these big fights in front of real crowds at real times and generating some of this interest. Otherwise, these fights and the UFC are going to take over, and the fights that we as hardcore fans actually want to see are going to be left in the dust. So that's my take on this situation, guys. I'm sorry that I'm very worked up, but I'm seeing the sport that I care so much about being badly, badly mishandled, and it's going to cause a big problem later down the road when these other types of entertainment actually start to take the place of hardcore boxing. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Thank you as always for watching. I will catch you in the next video.